Hello, everyone. This is Tommy at World at War Comics. Thank you for joining the podcast today. We have another special guest today. We're speaking with Brandon Ingram, writer and creator for Dismay Comics. But before we get into that, we want to remind you that our podcast is sponsored by Cien Chilies. Go to cienchilis.com today. Use comics at checkout, and you will save 15% off your total order. That's cienchiles.com. And put comics in checkout, and you will save 15% off your order. Here's what it looks like when you get it. It's amazing. This is the Thai bird. This is their hottest one. A little painful, but very flavorful. My favorite, by the way. Here's the jalapeno. I use this on hamburgers, tacos, everything. This is their actual #1 seller. And then they have a habanero that I've already opened. It's in the refrigerator, so I can't show you, but that one's good on everything. And also, if you go to their website, they actually have a mustard seed, which is also amazing. Please support them for supporting indie comics. Go to cienchilis.com, use comics at checkout, and save 15%. It's also brought to you by Comic Crusaders. If you want to know anything about comics, comic movies, even music, check out comiccrusaders.com. And there you'll see all the reviews. I'm a writer for them as well. You can see some of my reviews every single week as we are looking over all kinds of comics, including indie. All right, without further ado, we have Brandon Ingram. He is the writer and creator for Dismay Comics. And right now we're looking at Tales from Town City. They actually have a Kickstarter that is going on right now. If you go to Kickstarter and type in Tales Town City, you will see their Kickstarter. Back them. I'm a backer. You should be a backer too. All right, without further delay, here is Brandon and I talking comic books. Thanks, everybody. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics podcast. Today, I got a special guest, Brandon Ingram. Brandon, thanks for joining us. Brandon is with Dismay Comics. Got a lot of comics that we could talk about today too, Brandon. I didn't realize that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot that I wanted to basically put out there and create. It started as a bucket list thing with one, but then it just spiraled and just went from there.
Yeah. Well, let's start and end with your Kickstarter, if that's okay. So there is a current Kickstarter going on right now, and that is for Tales for Town City. Is that correct? And is that issue 1?
Tales from Town City. Yeah, issue 1 of Tales from Town City. Yeah, that's what the current Kickstarter is.
Nice. Well, you were kind enough to give me a little sneak peek on that. And I could tell you, anybody that's listening to this, you want to check it out. It was a lot of fun. There is 3 stories, which you could be super excited about within the issue 1, which was a lot of fun too. So we'll leave it at that. We certainly don't want to spoil anything, but they were a lot of fun. We'll just start there.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So Brandon, maybe we could kind of start at the beginning before we really get into Brandon, the writer and creator. Let's talk about how Brandon got into comics to begin with. So how long ago was your first kind of exposure to comics?
So really my first exposure, and I was thinking about this recently, like because I would say an answer, but I realized there was something before that. First real exposure, and it was the first movie I remember seeing in the movie theaters. I probably saw others, but first one I remember was Ang Lee's Hulk. I remember seeing that in the movie theaters. So movie if you watch it nowadays, but I distinctly remember watching it. And really enjoying it. And when it comes to actually reading comics, my first exposure was going to a yard sale. Like, me and my mom loved going to yard sales. Going to a yard sale when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and just finding a shoebox full of those 70s and 80s, like Marvel, DC, as well as there were some 90s. There was some Valiant, like just finding all these random comics and just like random parts within a story. So like part 3 of a 10-part story arc, but jumping in and just loving it. So that was like my first push into reading comics. And then once I got into high school, that's when I started picking up like monthlies and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Was there a certain writer that had a huge impact on you, or artist that you could remember?
I would say back then it was one of those things where like when I was that young, where I didn't focus that much on the writer or the artist.
Or even now, Brandon, even now.
I was about to say, like, as time went on, like I look back at a lot of those comics that were written or the art done. There's a ton of artists and writers that I love. uh, and it may not show in my work, but
Yeah.
you watch or read it, it impacts you somewhat, and
Yeah.
whether you know it or not, adds some bit to your work, or impression something in your creativity. But in terms of some of my favorite writers, like I've got a list of artists, and I'll get to a couple of those. In terms of my favorite writers, I really like Tom King. Not
Uh,
saying he's my favorite,
right.
but I really like Tom King and these like taking the C-list heroes
Hmm.
basically and just
Yeah.
like doing these 12 issue arcs with them
Yeah.
that are amazing. His Batman is so. I'm not a
Yeah.
huge fan of his Batman. But
Yeah.
stuff like Mr. Miracle and Omega
Hmm.
Man and stuff like that was really good. Scott Snyder's Batman, like
Yeah.
Scott Snyder as a whole, but Scott Snyder's Batman is what like got me into Batman. Like
Yeah.
back in the New 52 days, like
Yeah.
I was picking up monthly basically for that book.
Yeah.
Um,
The Court of Owls, right? Man, that
Scott's
was incredible,
oh
man.
yeah, well that was the first like Batman thing that got
Yeah.
me into consistently reading Batman because
Yeah.
at that point they were on issue like 20 or 30 or
Yeah.
something. But a friend of mine gave me the that trade, the Court of
Yeah.
Owls trade, and I tore through that. I was like, holy crap, like
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything like this. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and so him as well as oh, I know there's more. There's also mangakas, like manga
Oh,
writers
yeah.
and
Yeah.
artists that I really love. Like oh, I'm gonna butcher his name. I think
Yeah.
it's Takahiko Inoue. Like he wrote Vagabond, he wrote
Hmm.
Slam Dunk.
Mm.
He's written a bunch of stuff, but
Yeah.
specifically Vagabond, when it comes to comics or manga, is like
Yeah.
top three comics of all time for me. And the
Yeah.
book isn't even done. It's on hiatus. Like
Yeah.
he hasn't touched it in like 7 or 8 years. And even if he
Really?
never does go back to it, like still
Yeah.
gonna be my top three comics. I love Vagabond.
Yeah.
Um, so those are some of my favorite writers. I know there's a ton more.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just can't think of them right now, but artists like really like Dustin Nguyen.
Mm.
He's done a lot of stuff with Jeff Lemire, like
Yeah.
Descender, Little Monsters. Um, yeah, his watercolors are just beautiful. When it comes to the more like not entirely like classical look of comics, but like the contemporary look of comics,
Hmm.
I think Jason Fabok is
Hmm.
like one of the best artists. Like his
Yeah.
stuff looks just so epic.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's one of the artists where like I don't care what the book is. Like I'll pick it up because he did the art in it because it looks
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
awesome. And whenever he actually does do like big epic stories like Dark
Yeah.
Side War with the
Yeah. Yeah.
Justice League, like it's holy crap, this looks
Yeah.
amazing. Um, I love his stuff. I like Bill Sienkiewicz's stuff. Going back to like those 80s to even present day, like his stuff is just awesome. Just and seeing how like he started with that contemporary Marvel art style with stuff like Moon Knight, but
Yeah.
as he was getting out of that, he was doing all the experimental painting stuff,
Yeah.
like to where like New Mutants, like the New
Hmm.
Mutants, you had those beautiful painted those covers and stuff. Like Bill Sienkiewicz is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say those are some of my top artists, as well as Andrea Sorrentino. He's done a ton of stuff. Green Arrow, Gideon
Yeah.
Falls with Jeff Lemire. Uh, there's a ton of great artists, but those are some of the ones where like I like am so focused on. I love their
Yeah.
stuff.
That's awesome, man. Did you grow up more of a DC guy or a Marvel guy?
Ultimately, when it came to comics, DC, I was
Yeah.
ultimately a DC guy. I still am. Like I gear towards DC than Marvel when it comes to the comics. I love the Marvel movies. I've
Sure.
seen almost all the
Sure.
MCU stuff, whereas the DC stuff, it's like
Yeah.
half of those I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to the comics, I was more towards the DC stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when did you start having a passion for writing and creating? Where did that come from?
Ultimately, I noticed it or realized it like after high school.
Okay.
I was writing a bunch of like short horror scripts at the time,
Yeah.
but it was mostly like short film horror scripts. And I was really enjoying that. And at the time I was just thinking like, oh, like I guess I'm just randomly into writing right now. But then I looked back like years later and was like, oh, like there were pieces along the way. Like there were
Yeah.
stories I wrote in class or like as well as in high school got into Dungeons and Dragons a little bit, the whole storytelling aspect of that.
Yeah.
Um, so it was one of those things where ultimately started writing after high school, but realized there were pieces before that.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome, man. And then as far as like, what is your favorite part of writing? Is it the story itself? Is it the character development? Is it like, what are the aspects of writing that really get you kind of excited when you start to think of like that next comic book or next storyline that you're putting together?
I think because obviously like the idea, like
Yeah.
having the concept is great. That's
Hmm.
great. But the you get that same feeling with every concept or idea you have.
Yeah.
Like it's a good feeling, but
Hmm.
the unique like this is awesome feeling happens whenever like you're writing the script. Like you haven't most of the time I have an outline, or at least I know
Yeah.
like beginning and end, and then
Hmm.
I'm seeing what's in between. The fun, I mean, all of it's fun, but the part that really excites me because it like I don't know where it's going to go is like when the story is being written and being told.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because it's at least for me, it's like, and this is like such a cheesy like corny writer answer, but like these characters have a life of their own,
Yeah.
like like when you're writing, like these are like people in your head,
Right.
and
Right.
so you're not entirely like wanting to do what like Brandon wants
Right.
them to do. You're more like, what would they do? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like just seeing it form as you're writing and seeing it go to that ending, or sometimes you may not even have an ending in mind. Like
Yeah.
it go in an ending form naturally. It's like, holy crap, like I never saw, I didn't think that would happen or it would form like that. Like I
Right.
really like that aspect of writing.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. And I could see that too as a writer and creator. That would be pretty fun too. Now, as far as genres go in comic books, right? You certainly grew up, same with me, with more superhero genre, right? DC normally is maybe a little bit darker at times than Marvel, so maybe a little bit horror. You did mention horror a little bit earlier too. Is that your favorite genre? Because what I read was there's a little bit of horror, a little bit of gore, but it's also pretty funny as well. So I wasn't sure what your favorite, or do you have a favorite? You just like dabbling in everything?
When it comes to writing, when it comes to reading, there's like a ton of genres I love to read. Like I love reading horror stuff. I love reading
Yeah,
superhero stuff. I love reading like just it's a random genre, but it's like a great story type
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But when it comes to writing, I really do like writing horror, but I'd say horror, like this isn't like tooting my own horn or
yeah,
anything, but it kind of shows some of my weaknesses in a way of like horror is the genre where I can write the best at.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if I'm hitting a roadblock or writer's block or whatever you want to call it with some other script that's in another genre, but I
Hmm.
still want to write, I'll bounce over and write a horror script because like
Yeah,
it's the thing that comes like the easiest, the most natural for me, and like writing a decent one that
yeah,
isn't just like 1,000 different things you've already seen. Like horror is the one that like comes the most naturally to me. uh and I like writing comedy. Comedy is like the second most
yeah,
natural thing for me. Like I love writing comedy. um and then like some of my weaknesses come with like I can write serious stories
yeah,
like decently, but horror and comedy are really like the ones that are just easiest for me. But
yeah.
when it comes to like I have like romance comics
Hmm.
ideas. When it
Yeah,
comes to that type of stuff, like that's a weak spot for me.
yeah,
Like I want to write some of those stuff, but it's like
yeah.
it's tough sometimes.
Right,
So
right.
I do lean more towards writing horror and writing comedy because it's the most fun, most natural for me. But as writers and creators, we like to expand. Like we like
Yeah.
to write any and all genres if we can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm working on that with stuff like romances, for example.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because in the Tales from Town City, there is a little mixture of everything in there too. So I think you nailed that right. It's not, I mean, the first two, there's some comedy. The third one, there's some comedy too, but it's also superhero. All of them have a little bit of gore and horror. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that. And the breakup of the three parts, man, I just flew through that issue, and it's the same amount of pages as any other kind of comic book, but I felt like it went through so fast because the story was kind of broken up, and I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about
Thank you.
Dismay Comics, if that's okay. Where did that
Yeah.
begin, and how did that start? And then how many different titles are being published under Dismay?
So Disney Comics really started around March of 2019,
Mm-hmm.
where at the time, through a series of events, I finally pushed myself and was like, I'm going to make a comic. But at that time, it was like a bucket list thing where it's
Yeah.
just like, I'll make one, like this is a bucket list thing. And as I was not even a quarter way making that, I was like, oh crap, this is going to be a lot more than one. Uh, but as pretty much around that time, I was making horror comics. Like
Yeah.
I was making horror stories. I was trying to think of a good name that would fit this horror anthology series. And it took me a few hours in a day, but eventually I came up with Dismay Avenue for
Mm.
that series. And so I had that, and then within like 10 minutes, I was just like, well, I'm gonna have my own like publishing line. I'll
Yeah.
just call that Dismay Comics. I'll pull a Detective Comics with the whole DC comic thing and just have
Yeah.
Dismay Avenue, Dismay Comics.
Yeah. I
Uh,
definitely wouldn't
and
do
so I
DC
kind
on
of
your comics though. That could get you in trouble.
yeah. I want to avoid Batman sweeping through
Yeah.
my house and breaking my bones.
Exactly.
But yeah, like that's pretty much where that originated. And as I was making Dismay Avenue, one of the artists that I was working with on Dismay Avenue, uh, I at the time I was writing The Gallows Man. The Gallows Man was already written, but I was editing and converting it to a comic script because it
Mhm.
was a feature length film script at first. I was editing that, and one of the artists I was working with on Dismay Avenue, I was like, their art style is pretty adaptable because I've
Yeah.
seen it in their portfolio as well as I've seen like because I worked on two stories with them and it's different art styles. I was like, would you first check out The Gallows Man? Here's what it's about. Would
Yeah.
you be interested in doing it? I
Yeah.
understand if you don't want to do it after you check it out and read it. I get that.
Yeah.
But they read it and it's like, yeah, this is great. I was like, okay, I'll hire you to do two concept pages, basically first two pages, and we'll see
Hmm.
if it's a good fit. Got those two pages back. I was like, yes, this
Yeah.
looks awesome.
That's awesome.
And so hired them to do the Gallows Man. Those Helen Bolton. So yeah, Gallows Man, and then eventually after issue two of the Gallows Man, because at that point there was Gallows Man number one, Gallows Man number two, Dismay Avenue number one, Dismay
Mm.
Avenue number two. After issue two of the Gallows Man was out and published and Kickstarter and all that stuff, I was thinking about expanding the Gallows Man world a little bit, like following
Yeah.
the minor characters within the Gallows Man. And so that pretty much branch Tales from Town City, the
Oh, okay.
anthology spinoff of that,
Yeah.
basically.
Nice, nice. Yeah, because I noticed the Gallows Man, and
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
had to go to your Instagram and stuff to find out what some of the other books that you had. I'm like, okay, this is making more sense now.
Yeah.
So, how many different titles? Is there three different titles you have right now?
Currently, yeah, there's
Yeah,
The Gallows Man, Dismay Avenue, and
yeah,
Tales from Town City.
yeah,
I'm working on a few other things. Like all creators, we're always working
yeah, yeah.
on something. I'm
Sure.
working on a few other things. One I'm like heavily working on, but I don't know if I'll put it out through Dismay Comics. I
Okay.
might try putting it out through another publisher, mostly because it's going to be longer than like a mini series. With
Gotcha.
Dismay Comics, I wanted, because it's going through Kickstarter, to be like
Yeah.
no more than 4 issue mini series, or if it's Dismay Avenue where each issue is horror anthology, it doesn't matter what issue you pick up.
Right.
I'm fine with that. But if it's like a continual story that's 6 issues or more, I kind of want to find a publisher that can do that.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty awesome, man. That's pretty cool. So as far as Dismay Comics, you're doing everything through Kickstarter. It looks like you're selling a lot through Comic Cons. I saw a lot of pictures of Comic Cons that you're also going to. Do you have like a calendar of Comic Cons that you try to hit throughout the year? Or are you there yet?
So this was actually my first year of doing cons.
Oh,
2023
okay.
was my first year. So this year, I would say ultimately is a test year slash like what cons do I want to do in the future? What cons maybe not do, that sort of thing. But the downside for where I am, I'm in Northwest Florida,
Okay.
and there are not a lot of conventions around me. It's not like California. It's not like
Yeah.
South Central Florida. It's not like New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, there's not a lot of cons around me,
So the
so
largest
so
one
I
would
have
probably be
to.
Tampa, maybe?
Tampa's even far. Tampa for
Yeah.
me is about 9 to 10 hours
Ooh,
away.
man.
Yeah, I I try to kind of keep it like around. I don't really want to travel more than like 3.5 hours. Like I did one in New Orleans. Like that's kind
Okay.
of the furthest I'll do
Yeah.
until like somehow I luck out and some con doesn't realize that I'm not a big guy and they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, let's fly him out." It's
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
yeah.
no one tell them."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but but yeah, I've enjoyed it. The thing, like, there's obviously big cons like Fan Expo New Orleans
Yeah.
are good, but when it comes to indie creators,
Yeah.
it's not the best. I did pretty decent at that, as well as it was just a good time. That was
Yeah.
awesome. But the smaller conventions are always like great for indie creators, as well as just free comic book day. Like,
Yeah.
if anything stays on my calendar throughout the rest of my life, it'll be
Yeah.
free comic book day. Like, just 90-year-old me put up in a comic shop on free comic book day. Yeah, free comic book day was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just do signs and sell your comics on that day?
Yeah, on that day, it's almost how I like set up at a convention. I'll
Yeah.
do a table, um, and not saying it's all comic shops, but the comic shop I went to, like, it was just a free table. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
because I called them 2 3 months in advance, as well as it's kind of a local shop for me, about
Yeah.
40 minutes away. Um, and yeah, so I just set up my table like I would at a convention, and my table was like kind of near where the free comics were. So
Yeah.
whenever the people were getting the free comics, they were like, they saw my dumb face and my stuff, but it was awesome. As
Yeah.
well as, like, what helped was that whole local creator little
Yeah.
sticker I put there,
For sure.
because
For sure.
people in your area like love to support no matter what form of art or media it is. Like,
Yeah.
if it's local, they're like, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
That is pretty awesome. So you have a comic book store pretty close to where you live then?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Like, I've
Oh,
got
that's
one that's
cool.
about 30 minutes away and one about 40 minutes away.
That's not
So
bad.
not too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's walk through your Kickstarter right now that you have going on. How many days left do we have on the Kickstarter?
So now it's a little more than 2 weeks.
A little more than
October
two
5th
weeks.
is when it ends.
Okay.
So yeah, a little more than 2 weeks, about 15, 16 days.
Yeah,
And we've already hit the funding goal.
that's
I'm
awesome.
extremely happy and thankful for everyone that supported it.
Yeah.
Um, and we've hit that funding goal, as well as the book is completely done. Like, the
Nice.
book's
Congrats.
completely done, ready to just be send it to the printer and print it. So
Yeah.
so as a reassurance to people,
Yeah.
the Kickstarter is completely funded, book's completely done. Basically, if you back the Kickstarter, you're getting the book. There's no
Yeah.
like what if, like, you'll
Yeah.
be getting the book.
Nice. Well, congratulations, because Kickstarter can be a little stressful at times depending on where you're at in your goal. So to hit it
Yeah,
with you probably hit it with 3 or 4 weeks left, which is just absolutely phenomenal. So congratulations.
thank you.
Obviously, you've been able to build quite a group of people that really enjoy your comics, which is always really important. So and I noticed you have the add-ons for all the other comics that you have too. So if anybody is out there and wants to kind of test the waters on all three of the current Dismay comics, you could purchase Tales from Town City and then add on the other two, Gallows Man and Dismay Avenue, issue one,
Oh
or
yeah, oh
all
yeah,
of them if you wanted to, right? I'm sure there's some
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
an option where
yeah.
you get it all, right?
There's bundle tiers
Yeah.
as well as the add-ons and stuff. You're able to get all the comics. You're able to get T-shirts and all kinds of just different
Yeah.
stuff within there.
Nice, nice. Well, that's pretty awesome, man. Now, what do you do to sell your comics after the Kickstarter is over and people find out about Dismay? Where can they go to find your comics in between Kickstarters?
So I'm probably extremely dumb for doing this. Like most people looking at it, extremely dumb for doing this. What I do is I don't have an online store where I sell them online.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the only way to get the comics is through Kickstarter, or if you live in this South area that I am, the conventions I go to.
Yeah,
I mostly do that because I could honestly, overall, I am shooting myself in the foot doing it, but I do kind of like Kickstarter being like a little event, like
yeah,
going and backing these comics is kind of like a tiny little Dismay Comics event. It's like, oh, Dismay
yeah,
Comics is like rolling out with another comic, like
yeah,
this limited time to get it. Like I like that. Whenever series are like done,
yeah.
then I'll likely create an online store. Like when Gallows Man #4 is done, like maybe a year after that, all of them
Mm,
will be available online, that sort of thing.
yeah.
But currently, as series are going and ongoing, I kind of like the Kickstarters to be where you can get it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, if you want to get any of those comics, you got to jump on that Kickstarter within the next 2 weeks, then it sounds like.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. Anything else you want to share, Brandon? What else is going on with Dismay? Anything else coming on in the near future that you want to let everybody know about?
Yeah, I'll mention. Uh, First, I'll be at a couple conventions. If you live in the southeast area, I'll be at MobyCon in Mobile, Alabama, September
Nice.
22nd to 24th. That's
Oh,
coming
it's
up.
coming up this weekend,
Looking
right?
forward to that. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm looking forward to that. It's basically a little vacation for me, so I'm completely down for that.
That's awesome.
And then 2 weeks after that, October 7th and 8th, I'll be doing a Pensacon Halloween Fest in Pensacola, Florida.
Ooh, how far is that
It'll
from
be a
your
good
place?
time. From here, it's maybe 40 minutes away.
Oh, good for you.
I
That's
like
not bad.
that. Thank you. Yeah, I like that one because I don't have to get a hotel.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's the plus side with that is I can just drive back
Yeah,
home and save
yeah,
that money.
yeah, exactly.
But that'll be a good time. And in terms of like future releases, 2024, like this year, it was just one comic came out in 2023, Tales
Okay.
from Town City #1, just because of life as well as testing out all the conventions, first time doing
Yeah,
conventions. But next year, there's going to be two, if not three, comics coming
that's
out.
awesome.
Um, the Gallows Man #3 will be coming out early 2024. Uh, Disney Avenue #3 will come out likely mid 2024. And then 90% sure right now, not confirmed, Tales from Town City #2 will come out by the end of 2024.
Nice, nice. Now you mentioned your artist Helen, and it seems like she's worked on quite a few things for you, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like you have a pretty good working relationship, and you're trying to keep her on board to get all these things done for you, right? Which is always
She helps a
stressful as a
ton.
creator, right? You want to hold on to your artists and keep them busy so they don't go
she's
anywhere else, right?
she's excellent because it's one of those things where I started working with her on Dismay Avenue, the
Yeah.
issue 2. She did a 15-page story in that, then got her to do a 1-page story in Dismay Avenue #1, and really enjoyed working with her.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really want to keep working with her
Yeah.
because it's I don't know. It's not saying I have to justify stuff like the gallows man to people, but sometimes I do have to justify stuff like the gallows man to people
Yeah.
because it is like it's basically Adam West Batman meets Inglorious Bastards. Like
That's awesome.
it's set in the 1940s, and he has like the Adam West like fun jovialness, like the jokes and stuff, all while he's like beating up and like viciously killing Nazis.
I saw some of the
And
pictures and it gets pretty gory.
it does. So
Yeah, I love it.
it's one of those things where like she just puts up with my random writing, my stupid writing,
Yeah,
basically, to
yeah.
where it's like, hey, like okay, I'm okay with that. Like,
Right.
and she hasn't like she continues like each issue. Like once an issue is done, I'm like, hey, just check in. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to sign on for the next issue? You don't have to.
Yeah, yeah,
And she's like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm down. I'm like, okay. And
I mean,
then
she's
like
great.
issue Oh yeah, yeah,
She's
she does a
awesome.
great job because with the Gallows Man, like almost each issue like ramps up the
Yeah.
wildness of it. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you asked for it, here it is. But then she's like, this is great, and she'll just
Yeah.
do the art. It's like so okay. So yeah, I love working with her.
So she pretty much just does the Gallows Man then?
Yeah, she does Gallows Man. She
I
did
mean,
the 4-page story in Tales from Town City. It was the mortician story.
yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. I thought I
basically,
saw
I
her in there
had
too.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In Tales from Town City, I pretty much want her to do like backups for that, like little 4 or 5 page stories within Tales from Town City, kind of
Yeah.
as like a nod to like the Gals Man. It's like, hey, this is like the main artist of the Gals Man, like doing little
Yeah.
backups in this, like kind of a nod to that. So I like
Yeah.
that.
And then you have Juan doing the other two titles that you have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The main stories within Tales from Town City, the two homeless villains trying
Yeah.
to use expired coupon story, and then the super animal slaughtering poacher stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wanda's amazing with those.
Yeah. Is it Juan Romero? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Juan
Wanda
Romero.
Romero.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was also excellent. The artwork is fantastic. So I think you have two good ones for sure, Brennan.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do amazing work, and as a writer, like any comic writers, like have seen this and know this, like you can write the page, you can write the comic
Yeah.
script, the page, you have the panels laid out and stuff, but once you actually get that page back, and oftentimes when you get that page back, you realize like there are some changes, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's for the better. And it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
holy crap, like this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like thank you.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. The other question I had, because you do have a comedic side to everything I've read so far, and that is something that's kind of lacking in comics. I see horror is kind of really on trend right now, so a lot of
Oh
horror.
yeah.
In fact, DC just did Night Terrors, so when you see a big one of the big two really jumping in, and even Spider-Man has kind of a horror theme going on right now too. So horror is just kind of taking over comics, and that happens, right? The genres come in and people just get really into it, which I love, right? That what's to keep it pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
But comedy is something that you just don't see too often, specifically in the big two, but even in a lot of indie. But there are a couple indie comics creators that are really good at it. Do you have someone that you kind of look to, or is there just you just do your thing because there's not a whole lot of it,
In terms of
like
comic
writing?
creators,
Yeah.
there's yeah. In terms of comic writers, not a ton. There are some. It's more
Mm-hmm.
movie influences. I'll mention that in a second. But people like Matt Fraction. Matt Fraction does comedy very well.
Yeah.
He did the Hawkeye series, which is like it's the if anyone talks about a Hawkeye comic, it's the go-to one. He did that one. He also did Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, which is
No.
like a very
Yeah.
great book, but like not a lot of people read it, but it's very funny. He also did stuff like Sex Criminals, which I haven't read
Oh
Sex
yeah.
Criminals. I will
Yeah.
eventually.
That's through
Just
Image, I think, is
a
it?
variety.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's through Image.
Yeah.
And then I'm blanking on the person's name. There's a person that did. I've read more than just this from them, but they did. What's the book called? One Star Squadron. It was a
Okay.
DC book from last year. It was just a 6-issue miniseries that
Mm.
was basically like, here are these like C-list heroes, and they like, it's basically like a heroes for hire,
Mm.
where like with Marvel does heroes for hire. It's they have like their own firm, their own
Uh,
company where it's like, hey, you can hire these C-list heroes
yeah.
to get this cat out of your tree, or come to your kid's birthday party, or be your security guard, like that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. It was really funny, and it also had like very good heart touching moments. And then there was another one. I think it's Nick Spencer. Nick
Mm.
Spencer does a lot of action stuff, but he's
Yeah.
actually a pretty good comedic writer.
Really.
I
Yeah.
mentioned that because he's mostly known for the action and serious
Yeah.
stuff.
That's what
Like
I would know him
he
from.
did a
Yeah.
book. Yeah, he did a book that's like lesser known because it came out from Image back in like 2017, called The Fix. And me
Fix.
personally, it is one of the funniest comics I've read. It's not for all ages.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
preface that it's not for all ages, but it is so funny. Like the first issue,
Yeah.
there's a couple things that just had me like literally laughing out loud while reading it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I'd say, and what stinks about that is he put that on hiatus slash kind of canceled it, because that was, he was writing that, and it got to like issue 11 or 12
Really?
around the same time that Secret Empire was coming out, and that was his big
Oh, okay.
thing at the
That's the one
time.
I was
So
working
he
on
was writing
mostly.
Secret
Yeah.
Empire to where he had to push The Fix back, and
That kind of
maybe
makes
one
sense
day we'll
though.
get more
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but those are comic influences. When it comes to other media influences like stand-up comedy, like I'm not a stand-up comedian at all, but I love watching stand-up comedy, like Norm Macdonald. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
slash loved his stuff. Norm Macdonald's
He
amazing.
was so random
um
with his comedy that I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah, I mean, that's a big loss to the comedic world too.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
and even for like the nerds out there, like
yeah,
us geeks, like comic
for
nerds, like
sure.
there's stuff there, like he had like the one album that was basically like radio plays pretty much, and one of them was
Yeah.
about like the Fantastic Four. It was them getting their names. Like Reed Richard was assigning all their names, and then he's like, and I'll be Mr. Fantastic, and they're like,
Yeah,
wait,
yeah,
what? Like all of our names deal with our powers. Why are you Mr. Fantastic?
yeah.
It's so funny. Like Norm's hilarious.
Yeah,
So Norm Macdonald, Kevin Smith is also a
yeah,
big influence. Like
yeah,
I like Kevin Smith a lot. I like specifically the Clerks movies are
yeah,
just
yeah,
a fun, funny time. Um, so at least recently, not entirely saying Tales from Town City, but the recent stuff I've been writing have been like very influenced by Kevin Smith, whether that's for good
yeah.
or bad. I just love the stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, those are some of the influences there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I was just looking because I interviewed two of the three gentlemen that created Space Bastards. I don't know if you've ever read that.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
That's another one that I think you should pick up because that is
Okay.
quite funny. I think you'll like that as well. Um, yeah, it was Eric Peterson and Joe Aubrey. But check that one out, Brandon. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's about mailmen in the future, and they have to get the package from point A to point B. And if you're able to do that, that's how you get paid, and you get paid significantly. But everyone's trying to kill each other to have that package to be the final one to hand it over. But it's quite funny.
Okay.
And then another one that I think you should look up is Steamroller Man by Matt Schofield. It's a superhero with a steamroller as a head.
I've seen
Um,
it. Yeah, I've seen this
oh,
before. I haven't read it, but I've seen it. Yeah,
you
yeah.
should check it out. Matt is such a good guy, and your comedic timing and everything within your comic is very similar. He's also the storyboard director for The Simpsons for the last 23 years, so
Oh, wow.
he's awesome. And man, I would love to introduce you because I would love to get like a few comedic writers on one podcast and just have a lot of fun and
Yeah,
talk about
that'd be
some of the
awesome.
influences. And the last one is Lee Newman, and he wrote Sassone. And Sassone is a certain ballet kick that you do, and that's his superhero move. And so he wears ballet shoes, and
Okay.
but it's hilarious. One of my favorite comedy. So, anyways, we'll have to do that one time, Brandon, because you're kind
That'd
of
be
in
awesome.
that field, and anybody that's looking for a good time while they're reading. Obviously you have a lot of other great things that you're doing too outside of comedy, but your timing in comedy is awesome. So anybody who's out there that wants to have a good time reading a comic book, you should definitely check out Dismay Comics and check out Tales from Town
Thank you.
City when it comes out, because it's awesome. But yeah, man, if you're down, I would love to bring you all on and just have a fun time. It'd
100%.
be a blast.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Brandon, man?
That's mostly it. What I will say, like one last thing with the
Yeah.
Kickstarter is there's all the tiers ranging from $1 to $75. There's a
Yep.
tier for any budget, any bit helps. And I also wanted to mention this is a teeny tiny thing with it. It's not advertised on the Kickstarter, but
Yeah.
for all physical backers, you'll get these coupons.
Yes.
And what I'll say with
Yeah.
these are coupons within the actual comic
Yeah.
itself.
I love it,
Specifically,
man.
the two homeless villains using expired coupons. There's a 50% off tinfoil coupon. It's reversed because of my camera,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
canned yams 50% off,
I
as well
love
as
that, man.
there's fine print below it, and I'll read it for you. It says, "Offer only available at the supermarket located in Town City. Expires August 14th, 1941." So you kind of get these like in comic little things with your comic.
Yes.
So if you
I
back
love it,
physically, you
man.
get that. Obviously, the comics are a bonus. People
Yeah.
are just backing it for the coupons. You're just buying it
Yeah.
for the coupons. Comics are just bonus.
Yeah, the comic is definitely a bonus. But yeah, when you read Tales from Town City, you're going to really love those coupons. And I can't wait to get my hands on the coupons. You should sign them, Mr. Brandon. I think that would be pretty awesome too, man.
That's a good. I have not thought of it. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna
But
do
I
that. Thank
love
you.
it,
Yeah.
man. That is so awesome and such a really cool little perk that when you read the comic, you'll get a kick out of that, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Brand, I can't tell you how much I really enjoyed this. I would love to have you on again. I seriously want to do
100%.
kind of a comedy one. I think that would be a blast. There's not enough funny comics out there, and I'm always excited when I meet another creator who's doing that. I'm not very good at it, but you obviously are, and I really enjoyed it. And you have a fan for life for sure, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining me today, Brandon. Everyone, please go to Kickstarter, look up Tales from Town City. It'll pop up right away. Make sure that you're supporting Brandon and Dismay Comics. You will not be disappointed. And remember, you're doing it for the coupons. The comic book is just an extra.
Exactly.
All right, Brandon. Hey, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, man.